Hello guys, welcome to part 2 of our EDA class. I'm sure by now you've become so acquainted with what we discussed in part 1. So let us continue from where we stopped. Okay, so we are going to be starting from the order date. And I promised I was going to show you how we will deal with situations like this. It's quite tricky because of the various mix of formats within that order date column, right? You have, first of all, it's been assigned the general data format, usually in a format where data is collected in Microsoft Excel, right? So in this way, we haven't assigned any data type to it. Basically, it's most certainly not a text, not numeric, not dates, right? Right now as it is, okay? So you can see we have several formats. You see this number format here, right? And you can see this format as well, okay? So what we are going to do is to ensure that we convert everything to this number format so that we can then reconvert everything to the date format that we want, because that is the only way, right? By the time we successfully make everything have or look the same, then we can as well, or at least then transform them to the right format or right date format, okay? But what is crucial here that we should remember is that we have the year, if you look at these, the month, then the day, okay? So the arrangement we have before us is the year, the month, the date. It's very important for us to remember that because it will help us going further. Okay, so let's highlight that column. That is the order date column, right? We could just highlight from the top here, okay? You see, if I take my mouse here and I click, or rather I take my cursor here and click, it highlights everything, okay? So we will now head to the data tab in our ribbon. You can see it, right? The data tab here. Then we head on to data tools. So I'm going to click on text to column, okay? I'll click on text to column. So we have two items here. I'll be dealing with the delimited, okay? So I'll use this format here, the delimited format. I'll make sure it is checked, okay? Or I check it, then click on next, okay? I don't want anything here because it's not a traditional delimited that I want to do. Traditionally, this delimited is used to split data within Excel, within the spreadsheet here, okay? We could use it to split data, but that is not what I want to show us right now. So let's go to next. What I want to show us here is that, you know, this column data format, I told us earlier that it was set to general, right? But I want it to be date, right? And remember the format we discussed earlier. We said we had the year, month, and date format, as you can see in the column, as well as the preview here in the convert text to column wizard. Okay, so we are going to click the drop down here to select what? Year, month, and day. Okay, once we select that, we will click on finish. When we click on finish, guess what happened? Everything converted to that format except these. Okay, you can see, right? Except these. Okay, because of that, you see that this format is different. This format now is what? It's day, right? And we have months and year. So we are going to highlight that column again and repeat the process. Go to data tab, go to text to column under data tools, right? Make sure delimited is selected, then go to next, right? Go next again. Then now we want to select to satisfy that format, right? So we are going to pick check date, right? Then select day, month, and year. So day, month, and year, this format. Then we click on finish. When we do that, we must have successfully converted that. You can't find it anymore because we have changed that to that format or this format that we have here. Basically a harmonized format that will help us recreate the right format, okay? So that way now, we could easily now do this. We could go to our home tab, go to the numbers group here, this area, click on this icon here for us to get more number formats. Come to dates, then we could select any date format that we want. You know that this date type here are under the locale, that is the location United States, right? English United States. Like I showed us in Power Query, it is possible that we select several formats depending on where we are or the clients or the location of the clients, right? So we'll just leave it at United States. And you can pick a date format of your choice or a date type of your choice and click OK. Once you do that, you see that we have successfully dealt with this, right? We have dealt with this. And this is because we picked that year format. Okay, so if you click the drop down or the filter here, you realize that this is a table that we loaded from our Power Query. Remember from the part 1, right? So because it's a table, it naturally comes with what? Or by default comes with the filter buttons. And to tell you that we have done wonderfully well in managing our dates, you can see that our dates are properly aligned, okay? We can expand and see the months within each year. That's to tell you that these dates are clear. So I want to show you the difference between a cleaned date and an unclean date. Let me use that, an unclean date, basically. So look at this, right? The order date. We have seen how well presented the order date is because we have dealt with that nicely. Now let's come to the customer scenes rather, and see the difference. You see, this represents individual date entries instead of aggregation. So it doesn't really collapse to show that it understands or Excel understands that these are dates, right? It doesn't understand that. So that's the difference. We could use the order date now for analysis and will be good, but we cannot use the customer scenes as a date column because it is not seen as a date column. So what we'll do is we will have to also repeat the same process, right, of formatting these dates. So we will go to our data tab, go to text to column, make sure delimited is selected, go to next again, and let's make sure we can use it. Right now, it's in year, month, and day. We could decide to maintain that year, month, and day, then click on finish, right? So it forced it to the default date. Right now, if we select again, you see that right now we've had what? We've had a clean date. You can see that, right? A proper date. We have proper dates now. Okay. You can see, right, from 2025 to 2019, you can see our dates have been fixed properly. So click OK. So that is the way you can deal with this, okay? You can actually deal with this and have your dates column cleaned. I believe by now you should give yourself a round of applause. You've done well. All right. So let us, I think that is that. Then I would also like to show us, right? We have the price column here. We have total sales column. So these columns are formatted as numbers now, I believe. Right now, these are decimals, right? But here in Excel, when you go to home, you see that they are formatted as numbers, okay? We can format them as numbers. But what is important to note is that since they are price, they ought to have what? They ought to have currencies. And since we have total sales, they also ought to have currencies. So we could format these two columns to currencies, okay? To do that, you highlight the column, then let's go to more number format. Then you select currency, okay? You can click the drop down here for to help you select from a list of currencies, depending on the currency you want to use. If you want to use US dollar, you go ahead and pick that. If you want to use the Naira, the Nigerian Naira, you go ahead and pick that, okay? So I'm just going to use this Igbo here, all right? And then this represents decimals as well, the decimal places. So we want to leave it at 2 decimal places because you can see what we have, right? Then go ahead and click OK. Once you click OK, you see that the price column have been properly formatted to that currency. You can do the same for total sales, okay? Let's go to more number formatting, pick currency, and go ahead and click this. So you have that as that. But let me correct, it's on currency right now, but the formatting is not right, okay? So let's go ahead and correct that, okay? So currency, now let's pick Naira and then click OK. All right, so we tried formatting our total sales or using currency, but for several reasons, we couldn't do that. So I'm going to explain what you could do. Usually, when you collect data, you will have to pay attention to the format, right? The format of the data. And what you can do is actually to think of several things that could prevent the data type change from occurring. It could be that you have special characters that you can't see within the cells. It could also be that you have blank spaces that you cannot see within the cells. Those two, I will show you how to deal with them. Then when we are done with dealing with those two parts, we also see how, even though we have converted this to numbers, there are also several reasons why this may not want to be converted to numbers. Then we can just use a simple multiplication trick or the value formula in Excel to convert to value, then we convert to currency. It's just a way of dealing with situations like this. Okay, so let me insert an empty cell, or rather an empty column beside total sales. So what I'll do, I'll click on the O column here. That's the column beside the total sales column. Right click and say insert. So it's going to insert a column there. So what I want to do now is just to clean this, basically show you how, right? You may clean or trim items within your table. So we'll say equals trim. So the trim removes all spaces from text strings except for single space between words, right? So we will open parentheses, take the value to trim, close parentheses, and hit enter. So you would have trimmed that, right? But I want to point out that that is if you have spaces, but that is not the case here. But I'm just showing you that you could apply that, okay? So let's clear this, right? And I'll show you how to use clean again. Clean removes special characters, okay? So we'll say equals clean, right? Open parentheses and pick the value we want to clean, close parentheses, and hit enter. Now, you see that these autofills, right? This is one of the characteristics of performing analysis or calculations within a table. You just impute the first cell, and it autofills completely for other cells. This is not what happens if you're working within a range. If you're working within a range, you will have to autofill, right, by yourself. So it doesn't autofill automatically. So, right, so we have seen this, right? So that is just describing that for you. But in this case, particularly in this case, what we need to do is that we need to make sure that we can present this as values. But I also want to show you something, right? I'm working on worst case scenario here, showing you this. So I'll always like that you pay attention to the data type, right, that you have here. Whenever you move from column to column or cell to cell, I would like you to look at that. In some situations, right, where you have where your column is formatted to text, right? If it's a text, you find out that your formulas wouldn't work. Your formulas will be collected as text, right? Even if right now we say equals and we say N2, or we pick this and say multiply by 1 and hit enter, you see that it won't calculate for us, right? Excuse me. Because it looks at it as you have inserted a text rather than a formula. So I would like you to always pay attention to that, because it may occur when you are practicing and you say, oh, it's not, I'm doing exactly the same thing and it's not working. It's because you are not paying attention. So, okay. So let's change this type to basically numbers now and remove this formula and do the same thing. We can say equals, right? Pick this now and say multiply by 1 and hit enter. You see the difference. So basically, why am I multiplying by 1? I just want to convert this. Are you seeing the difference? I just want to convert this. But I want to show you the reason why this happened. You see that there are some that are in 2 decimals. There are some that are in 1 decimals, right? You can see that, right? There are others 2 and some 1. So you see that they are not actually in the same format, because if they were actually in the same format, you'll see that they will all be in 2 decimals if we want them to be in 2 decimals. Okay, so we are multiplying by 1 because 23.9 multiplied by 1, you see 23.9 is still what any number multiplied by 1 is still that number. So you can either use these, or let's take that out. You just say equals, you use the function value. The function value converts a text string that represents a number to a number. You get it, right? The function value here converts a text string that represents a number to a number. So you may look at a number, you may have tried to force the number to actually be formatted into a number. It may look to you like it's been formatted to a number, but it will not, it's not formatted to a number. Now I want to show you something again. The difference, if you look at this, we forced it to be aligned to what? To the right. That is because numbers are aligned right, while text are aligned left by default in your spreadsheet here. So by default, this is what it looks. Now, if I convert this to text, it still looks the same thing, right? To the left, that is how it's supposed to be. By default or naturally, if I convert this to numbers, it was supposed to what? Automatically go to the right. However, we have some within here that are text rather than numbers, okay? So what we do now is that to make sure that we can actually get them to be numbers, actual numbers, we may use multiplication, right? To just multiply the values by 1 like we showed you earlier, or we can just go ahead and use the value function, right? Again, we say the value function does what? It converts a text string that represents a number to a number. So we don't want to have a representation of a number. We want to actually have that number. So we'll say equal value, open parentheses, then pick the text, close parentheses, and hit enter. You see what happened? Immediately, it formatted what? To the right, showing us that, yeah, we got it right. It's now formatted to the right. And after the formatting, check out the difference. Here, which we formatted as numbers, but for us, we formatted as numbers. And Excel is showing us that they are numbers. However, by their characteristics and performance, we know that the conversion did not work, right? They are still text, right? So, but guess what? Here that we converted to numbers, guess what happened, right? Here we can see we have 23.90, satisfying the 2 decimal points. Whereas here we have 23.9, and that is to say the decimal points were not correct because here we have 200.34, we have 189.7, you see? So we have mix or conflicting decimal points, okay? So there's something else I want to show us now. So here we use this to decrease decimals. You see, even though they are numbers and we are trying to decrease decimals, they are not working. We use this to increase decimals. We are trying to increase decimals. They are not working. That is another way to show you that, oh, yes, we have said it should be numbers, but it's not agreeing to be number, right? It's still on text. If we come and highlight this, right? This column we converted to numbers, right? The total sales we converted to actual numbers now. We can easily do what? Reduce decimals or increase decimals, right? You can see we can increase, we can reduce. That's to tell you that it's recognized this, our new conversion, as truly numbers, okay? So, but because realize that formulas have a connection to their origin. So this is the origin. If I were to remove this value, you see that it will point, it will show 0.0 here. So we will make sure that we can copy this, right? And paste it as value. So what I'll do is to insert a new column, right? Okay. So let us copy it. Then we will paste as what? As values. So instead of doing the Control V, you are not going to do the Control V. You are going to right click. You are going to either come to paste options here and paste as value, or go to paste special, right? You'll see various ways you can paste. This paste special will basically show you various ways you can paste, but we want to paste values. So you can click on paste values. So we have pasted these values. The difference here is that these values now is not linked anywhere. It's indeed a standalone value. So if we delete the total sales, right, we can delete this total sales column. It will not affect this paste as values that we have done, but you see that it affected the other, that where we converted it, rather, where we use equal value. You see the reference is no longer there. That's why we have the reference error. So we can remove that, right? And now rename this to total sale. Okay. So now we have our total sales that we can easily decrease and increase our decimals. Okay. And we can convert to currency. You see, currency now is working. We can easily convert to currency, right? So let's go to more number format and pick the currency that we want. We want dollars, right? Okay, so now I showed you earlier how we can use the Naira and other currencies, okay? All right. So another thing we need to deal with basically is this discount in percent. You can see we have various discount in percent, but guess what? When we come here, you see it's in general, we have to format to percent. And when you format to percent, you see that even when you format to percent, is it accepting to be percent? See, it's not. So what will you do? You actually still ensure that you do what? You convert to values as well. Okay, so you see these kinds of issues there. Or you can take it back to Power Query, then ensure that you pay attention to discounts and easily just change the data type of discounts to say, I think, let's see, we have whole numbers, right? You can make it whole numbers so that when you come back here, you can easily do what? Make them percentage. Okay, to take this to Power Query, you know, this came from Power Query, but we have done some adjustments here. So it's only right for us to basically just take that this back to Power Query. We could take this to Power Query by going to data. Then let's get from table arrange. Then So the error, the notification or notice it was given, it was that, oh, this data, it's already connected. You see, it says sales 2, because you remember I said that we brought it from Power Query, okay? But the reason why we had to take it back to Power Query is because of what? Remember, the order dates and the customer scenes have been changed. And we're trying to change here in Power Query. It was not as easy as changing it here in Microsoft Excel directly. That is why we had to use the easy way that will be practicable. All right, so now that you see we brought it back, we could, if you go to the first query now, you see, right? This is the first sales, what we brought to or took to Excel earlier during the part 1. You can see we had not worked on the date then, okay? And while we were working on the date, it will give you errors here, and we didn't want to lose any date based on formats, right? That is why we basically worked on it on the spreadsheet there. So because we had dealt with the dates in the spreadsheet to have the correct dates, we couldn't continue with that connection, right? So we took it back to be able to easily adjust orders, right? So now what we can do is to make sure that we change this. You can just double click on it to change or rename it. We can call it up or clean sales. Okay, we can call it what? Clean sales. Okay, clean underscore sales. So while naming, make sure that you don't have space or any special character apart from underscore, or you just put the words together, clean sales. That will be fine. So we have clean sales. So we could work on these and import it or load it as a separate connection, right? Okay. So you see the dates. Remember what I showed you when we were working in part 1? I showed you the data types, right? Here, you could see that we have date and time, isn't it? We have date and time. You could easily just click on this and just make sure. This is what is selected right now. You could make sure it's just dates, okay? Let us, we can add new step, right? So it's just dates. You can make sure it's just dates. It helps your analysis. Okay, right now it's date and time. And how do you know that? How did we come to that conclusion? You can see this little clock and the calendar here. It shows you that it's date and time. Okay, so let's just pick date. Right now, you just see the calendar. Okay, then age is fine because age shows that it's whole number. You can see it by the 1, 2, 3. So gender is alphabet as represented by the ABC, region, the same thing, city, the same thing. Our product ID is meant to be text, right? Because of the presence of the P there, okay, so it's fine. Our product category is ABC. Our price now, it's in decimal, right? Our quantity, whole number, so that is fine. Now, you see what happened when we imported or took the data back to Power Query. It did some auto adjustments for us. Remember, the discount was text. Even while we tried converting to numbers, we couldn't achieve that. But you see, when we brought it here, it automatically converted that to whole number, right? Like I stated from the beginning. Our total sales is decimals, right? Then our channel is text as we want it. Our sales rep is text. Our rating is whole number, which is fine. Our return flag is text, which is good. Our shipping days is whole number, is fine. Then we have latitude and longitude as decimals is good. Comments, whole number. Overdue status or order status rather, text. Coupon code is text, which is good. Coupon applied, we use these, the true or false, right? Where you see the X and good mark is a true or false because we have true or false and we want to maintain it that way. Loyalty score is whole number. Churn flag is what? Whole number. Ship or shipping method is text. So you see now, just with these, we can say we have our data properly cleaned, at least here. So what we can do again is to click close and load to, right? Because we want to load it to our data, add this to data model because of what we will do with it later on. Okay. We also want it to come into Excel as what? A table. Okay. So we basically want it to come into Excel as a table in a new worksheet and add this to our data model so that we can access it within our data model. So we click OK. When we click OK, we will have our new data loaded, which is what? Clean sales. Okay, so it's loading right now. Okay, so we have it loaded. Okay, so our clean sales is loaded. Okay, so you can see, well, let's go back to where we ought to have currencies, the price and the total sales. So we can just continue to add currency because this will help us continue the currency during analysis, or when you perform your analysis, you can just indicate the currencies that come with it. But I just wanted to show you how you could pick your currency. Okay, this is dollar, and we can just work with that. Then total sales as well. Let's go to currency and pick dollar as well. So you see, nice and easy. All right. Then our percentage. So we can format this to percentage, really. You see now it's percentage. Easy, right? Remember how it was with the other this thing. But there's something I would like to point out here. You see, when we formatted to percentage, you see 25% became 2,500 percentage, 50% became 1,500, that is 5,000 percentage, and so on. So it can be an issue if we format to percentage this way. So what will happen is that we know that it's percentage, right? So we could just leave it as numbers and then reduce the decimals to 0 decimals or no decimal, so that we will just realize that what we have is percentage and we use the percentage appropriately. Okay. So nice that I pointed that out, right? Okay. So now the next step we'll be going into now is descriptive analysis. Okay. Or before we go into descriptive analysis, I would like to point out something we discussed. I think we didn't round that up when we were talking discussing part one. We're talking about blank or null values. So I want to point out something here. You know, when you come to price and total sales is it's a product of quantity and price, or price and quantity. That is price multiplied by quantity, or quantity multiplied by price, as you like to have it. Okay. So if that is settled and we agree on that, you find out that we don't have blank cells in total sales, right? When you go to total sales, you see that we don't have a blank, right? Or do we? Okay, no blanks. No blanks, right? But when you come to price, I believe you are going to see some blanks. Let's look at that. Yes, we have blanks. So let's see how many entries are indeed blank. So let us deselect all and come back to select blank. And let's see how many entries. You see a whole, how many rows? Let's look at that. 79 records, right? You can see that here from the auto analysis here. You can see it, right? 79. So now that we have 79, But we have 79 blank cells when it comes to price, okay? Now, but when you come to total sales, we actually have the total sales for this blank cell. So if we were to drop blank cells and drop this price, the challenge will be that we are dropping we are dropping customers that actually purchased a product or two or three. You can see, right? The quantities here are present. The total sales here are present. So we may think of it like, to get the price of these, we will just divide the total sales by the quantity that they purchased. That will make more sense than dropping them entirely. We will not have to drop them. So I decided to bring this up so that you are clear about, number one, dropping empty cells. Number two, you filling them up, right? Either using average or using a measure of central tendency, basically average and median, or mean and median, or using a fill up and fill down as we discussed earlier. Now, you see that the fill up and fill down wouldn't apply in this case. Why wouldn't it apply? It wouldn't apply because let's look at the nearest blank cell. Let's look at the nearest blank cell. If we fill down that cell, you see that it shouldn't make sense, right? Watch this now. If I was to fill down $183.5, $183 and fill it down here, we multiply 183.5 by 2. Are we getting the total sales of 327 or $327.72? Are we going to get that? No, we won't get that. And that already is showing that we are already making mistakes with our analysis, right? You see, that is it. So I'm going to treat the blank cells under price as negligible. Why? Because I have a higher value, or the total sales here, that shows that the total sales was actually captured and the quantity of product purchased by that customer was properly captured. So I think that would be good for us to cover that front. Okay, so that being said, let us now go to descriptive analysis. So descriptive statistics help us summarize, right, describe, and understand patterns in our data set. Right, in Excel, we can use both formulas and pivot tables to generate descriptive statistics, but we are going to begin with formulas. And with formulas here, we'll be breaking them into 3 key parts, or more than that, basically. Let's use, we'll be doing key Excel functions for descriptive statistics. Then we'll be creating summary blocks. Then we'll now use pivot tables for summary statistics, right? Those 3 parts. So, but for the key Excel functions for descriptive statistics, we are going to be discussing formulas for counting and frequency. We are going to be discussing formulas for aggregation. We are going to be discussing formulas for measures of central tendencies, as well as measures of spread. So we will look at that, but let's begin with counting and frequency. So for counting and frequency, we will start with the count functions, okay? So basically, we will describe what the functions will do. We will now see how this works, but we will be doing that in a fresh sheet, right? Not in our data set. So we basically cannot just go to the side of these and begin to perform our analysis. So we are going to do that in a fresh new sheet. So I said we are going to be looking at counting and frequency, right? So let's do or begin with the first one, which is count, okay? So I'm going to write it here so that we'll look at it, okay? So count. So what does count do? Count is used to count numeric values only, right? To count numeric values only. So if we say equals count, for instance, right? You say it counts number of cells in a range that contains what? Numbers. it counts what? The numbers of cells in a range that contains numbers. And hence I said it is used to count numeric values only. So basically, let's use it to count our quantity column, right? So I open parentheses, it says value 1, value 2. So what I'm going to do is to use my formula bar here to make sure I can head freely to the clean sales data or table where I have, or sheet where I have my clean data. And we are looking at the quantity column, right? So I'm looking at the quantity column, yes. So I'm going to use, start from L2 here. Okay, so let's take it down. Just hold down Control and Shift is going to take it down to the end. Okay, or you can just use your mouse and highlight to the end, or you can go to the end of your, this is 15,001. So you are going to say L2 to L15,001. So that will give you the clear address. So, but there's something I want to show you here. You see, when we clicked on the sheet name, automatically Excel just picked the sheet name. And when we clicked on the table, it still picked the sheet name. So what we are going to do is to make sure we remove one of it, okay, so that we don't have error. So I'm going to close the parentheses and hit enter. You see now it counted that, the cells as 14,941. Okay, that is what it counted for us, 14,941. So the question is that what if we count total sales? If we count total sales, what will that do? Let's see, because we say total sales had nothing missing. If you come to quantity, you see that quantity have some blanks, right? Basically, I want to show you the difference. So let's count. Okay, so this one is count of quantity. Okay, let's do the count of total sales, basically. Okay, and see what we get. So if we can say equals, we say count, open parentheses, and let's go to that clean sales. Okay, and I'll just take these off because to give me that, and pick total sales here. Remember, our value starts from 2, that is row 2, and ends in row 15,001. So we'll say use column, right? We'll say 15N rather. N is the column, the alphabet assigned to that total sales column, right? So N 15,001. Close our parentheses and hit enter. So what's the difference here? The difference is that total sales had nothing missing, no blank sales, right? No blank cells rather. But quantity had some blank cells. So because of the blank cells, we had the cells that have the presence of values in them as 14,941, and count of sales came as 15,000, right? Why? Because we had nothing missing. In fact, if you come to clean sales, you find out that the first row is used as our column headers. So it's appropriate that 15,001 will mean it's 15,000, right? Cells that have values. I hope that is clear. So that is what happened there. So this is for counts, right? Let us look at the next counting and frequency formula or function. We have count A. So count A counts all non-empty cells, that is including text and numbers. Say you want to count non-empty cells, including what? Text and numbers. Okay, so that is what happens in count A. So now remember, what if that, okay, now that we have looked at quantity and we say there are some blank values, what if we wanted to count the blank cells within that quantity, right? Within that quantity column. Let's know that, okay, now we had cells with values as 14,941. How many cells within that quantity column are blank? So what can we do? Do we have a function to do that? Yes, we do. It is called count blank. It's called what? Count blank. Count blank counts the number of empty cells in a specified range of cells. So that is what I mean by either in a column or in a row, as you like to determine. Okay, so we say count blank, open parentheses, and let's count the blank in our quantity column, shall we? So let's head to our clean cells. Remember what I do. I will remove these and then go to our quantity, right? And click on the quantity. It's still going to give me L2. That is the address of the first cell with values or with number after the column header quantity, right? Including the what? The sheet name, clean cell. Okay. Now I'm going to give the full range. The range will be everywhere I want it to basically look within. And I want it to start from L2 and end in L15,001. So I'm going to use column and I'll say L15,001. Then close my parentheses, right? I close my parentheses and hit enter. When I do, it tells me I have 59 blank cells. So if we were to add 59 to 14,941, will we get 15,000? So let's see that. I want to add, I'll say equal sum. So sum is a formula or a function we use to add. And I want to add this 59 and this 14,941 and hit enter. Oh yes, it gave me 15,000. That is to say that we actually have 59 blank cells. Okay, I hope that is clear. So let us just label this as count blank of what? Quantity. Okay. All right. So let me expand this, double click here, right, to expand it so that you see our labeling clearly. So we have done count blank, right? Now let us enter conditional counts. By conditional counts, I mean counts with an aspect of conditional analysis. So we are going to use the count if. So count if counts how many times a condition is met. That is why I say we have a conditional spin added there. So let's say we want to do count if. This is what it is, right? Count if. Now, assuming you are asked, you have several locations, right? Let's go back to our clean sales and we see we have several regions. Let's use regions or gender, but we'll use region instead. We have several regions. What if we want to show the marketing manager the total sales from several regions, right? You can see we have Enugu repeats, and so on. So these are various customers coming out of Enugu. We have Lagos, we have Anambra, and we have these repeated, Oyo and Rivers, okay? So these are customers from there. Let's say we have our shops or our clients have their shops in these locations, right? We want to see the best performing location, okay? Let's go ahead and see that. But to do that, we will want to, okay, now that is us using sum, basically. I'm talking about sum because I want to compare sum and what? And sum in total, sum total sales by region. So basically, forgive me for confusing that. But we could count based on conditions as well, right? Using count if based on a condition. For instance, we could count Lagos, right? We could count how many times Lagos appeared in our region. We could count how many times Anambra appeared in our region. So what do we do? Let us now look at our data set and understand it clearly. I come to the drop down and I have several locations, right? Abuja, Anambra, Enugu, Kaduna, Kano, Lagos, and Oyo. So I can basically take those in, right? We say we have Abuja, right? We have Anambra. We have Enugu. We have Kaduna. We have Kano. If you are not from Nigeria, these are excellent cities in Nigeria, right? We have Kano, we have Lagos, we have Oyo, we have Rivers. Okay, what we will do now is to go back to our analysis sheet and enter all of these, right? We'll say Abuja, Anambra, Enugu, we have Kaduna, Kano, Lagos, Oyo, and Rivers. So let's make these, let's say these will be our counts, okay? So basically, we want to count how many times Abuja appears. If we do count how many times Abuja appears, we could at least know the number of customers coming from Abuja, right? Because it represents the numbers of customers. So we could use this to answer how many customers purchase product from our Abuja shop, how many from our Anambra shop, how many from our Enugu shop, how many from our Kaduna shop, how many from our Kano shop, and so on. So let's go ahead and do that. If we say equals, we could say count if, okay? Now, remember what I say count if does? It counts the number of cells within a range that meets a given condition, isn't it? So I open my parentheses. What do I need to do? I need to insert the range, then I'll say comma, and insert the criteria, right? So what is the range? The range is what I want to count, right? And I just want to count the is it location or something? Let's go back to that sheet, okay? I'm going to take these out, okay? So I now want to count region, okay? From the region, I can click that region and take the entire region. Since it's in a table, it will come out as cleaned this way. So it represents as it has taken the entire column. Okay, if I take this out and come back and do it again, and I'm just holding Control and Shift and my down arrow key, so it just gives me the entire clean region. So I'm doing that so that when I insert, if I had gone ahead to insert these, you may not understand. So that is why I did that, and I'm explaining this to you as well. Okay, so now I want to count this. This represents the range, right? It represents the range. So I'm going to say, comma, okay, now I need to insert the criteria. The criteria now, I could had impute the criteria. What do I mean by that? Since the first is Abuja, I could open quotes, right? And say Abuja, and close quotes, and close my parentheses. So now what will happen is this. This way, I have inserted my my criteria directly in the formula. But this is not dynamic, right? So when I hit enter, you see it will tell me the number of times Abuja appeared in my data set. This basically represents the number of customers coming from Abuja based on the data set we have. But the funny thing is this, I will not be able to autofill it, right? It's going to give me the same values. So what do I do in this case? What I'll do is to make sure I remove this hard encoded Abuja, remove it, and replace it with what? A cell address. And that cell address will be where Abuja is written, right? Abuja is currently in A9, right? If I hit enter, you see it's still going to give me the same result. The difference here is that I can come to this box here, double click to autofill, and it will actually give me a correct result, right? It gives me the number of times Anambra appeared in our data set. Watch this. If you ever doubt this, right? Anambra, right? We could go to that formula and change that to Anambra and see, right? So if we change to Anambra, remember, as I'm inputting a text here, I am putting quotes, okay? So because it's a text within that range. So if I hit enter, it still gives me the same value. So that shows that we are correct. So which will you rather use? Will you want it to be dynamic so that you easily automate your process, or you want to hard code it? Let us know, okay? Now, you see, this is COUNTIF. Are you seeing that? This is COUNTIF. So we basically have counted just as we're counting before, but with a twist of adding a condition. And the condition here was what? The location that we use. Mind you, you can use anything. Just apply this to different scenarios that you need to apply it to. Okay, so let us now do the plural of COUNTIF. The plural of COUNTIF now is going to be COUNTIFS, because there we use multiple ranges and multiple criteria. Okay, this is where we use multiple conditions, right? So we can use multiple conditions, and let's go. So we will say COUNTIFS. Okay, COUNTIFS. All right. So what are the conditions we'll need to use? Let us do orders in Lagos. Those that order electronics or particular product category from our locations, right? Let's do that. So we'll say Abuja here. Let's go ahead and say equals COUNTIFS. You see, COUNTIFS counts the numbers of cells specified by a given set of conditions or criteria. Now, plural, okay? Or plural. All right. So we are going to insert our criteria range 1, okay? Our criteria range 1 is where we want to pull our criteria 1 from. That is what it is. Our criteria range 1 is where we are pulling our first criteria from, okay? So let us go to our clean sales, and we will use region because that will serve as our true criteria range 1, okay? Now, we say comma, it will ask us for our criteria 1. Now you get it, right? Our criteria range is where we pull our criteria from. So our criteria range 1 in this case is region, and our criteria 1, I'm still going to put it so that we will change it later, will be Abuja, for instance, right? Because that's the first item there, so we don't mix it up. Then we say comma. So what is our criteria range 2? Our criteria range 2 will be, because we said we want to know those that bought a particular product. So let us use our product category, right? Our criteria range 2 is going to be product category, okay? So let me take that. So product category, you can see that, right? So when I say comma, it asks for what? Our criteria 2. So our criteria 2 must come from our what? Must come from our product category, because that was our criteria range 2. So let me use electronics. So I'll put quotes and I say electronics. You see why we have to clean and harmonize our data set, right? Because if we don't, we will be counting short of what it actually is. So from these, you can keep going. If you say comma, you see that it is requesting for criteria range 3. You can keep going if you want to continue. You can continue if that is what you want to achieve. But now let's just stop here. It doesn't change the syntax. It continues. Remember what it is. Your criteria range is where your criteria comes from. You get it, right? So I cannot say my criteria range is female and my criteria is coming from product category. No. My criteria range is where I'm going to be pulling my criteria from. So if I say my criteria range is product category, my criteria must be one of the product in the product category. Okay, so let's close parentheses and hit enter. You can see here that it tells us that in Abuja, electronics was purchased how many times? 213 times, right? So this, we just imputed Abuja directly, but what we can also do is to basically list, right? I could remove this Abuja here and just refer to where? To a cell where I have the criteria listed, okay? But remember what we did, right? We use region as our criteria range 1, as you can see from the formula. So whatever we list here as our selected criteria must come from what? Must come from our criteria range 1, which is what? Region. So even if I make mistake in the spelling here, it wouldn't recognize it. So kindly be guided. If I hit enter, it's still going to give me the same result. Here's what I changed. I changed this, right, to our label. So if I had electronics or my product category listed somewhere too, I will have changed it. But since we are focused on electronics alone, we can leave this formula this way. Okay, so let me autofill this, and you see, you find out that electronics was purchased how many times? Electronic was purchased 213 times in Abuja, 228 in Anambra. So let us get the total of these, and let me show you how to basically cross-check. We could say equals sum, and I want to know how many times these basically, or what is the sum of these? This is about 1,850. So if I did a count if for electronics, will I have a total of 1,850? So let's try that. We say equals count if, open parentheses. I have a range and a criteria now, right? So let's go to our cleaned. I want to pick product category because I want to check there for electronics, right? And I'll say comma and open quotes, and I search for electronics, or I insert electronics and close my quote, close my parentheses and hit enter. So what do we get here? Exactly the same. So now we have electronics as 1,850, but better still, we have it distributed according to, based on the regions of purchase, right? You see, analysis is interesting, right? Well done. Okay, so what else do we have to do? We have done for the counting, or basically finished the counting and frequency aspects. So now let us go to the aggregation aspect. Okay, for the aggregation aspect, we'll be looking at functions like sum. We'll be looking at functions like SUMIFS, then SUMIF and SUMIFS rather. Okay. Okay, so let's get started. So let's look at, we'll just go here and I say aggregation. Okay, then we will start with what? Sum. So we've been doing sum, right? Sum is what we use to get this. It's just the sum function, then the range you want to sum directly. That is just the sum. So let us sum our total sales. We could just sum the total sales, right? So we'll say equals sum, open parentheses. We want to sum our total sales. Let's see, total sales is total sales. Okay. So that's total sales. So that's fine. And remember, the reason why you're not having the range, that's the beginning, say L2 to, rather not L, this will be N, N2 to N 1,000 or 15,001 is because we have this in a table. That could work if we remove this and say N2 rather to 15,001. Let me show you. If I take this out and say I'm referring to N2, or I have to impute the I have to impute, sorry, I have to impute the sheet name. If not, you know, I'm coming from a foreign sheet, that is sheet 2. If not, it's going to use the address in the other sheet. So N2 to N15,001, close parentheses. It means the same thing as saying this, okay? You know, this one I just took out, right? This one I took out will represent a range, while this will represent a range in a table, right? That's the difference. So I close my parentheses and hit enter. I have my sum. Remember why I said it's important if you are talking about sales, right, or currency, it's important to impute a currency. You see, because we had currency there, when we calculated the sum, it came out as currencies instead of allowing us to always format the currencies everywhere we go, okay? Now, let us do some ifs. Some if, rather. We'll say some if. That is what we want to do. Some if will basically use the same system we use for count if. Only now we have to sum, we are not counting. So I'm going to take this region. I'm just going to take this region for example. But there are various things you can summarize this way. For instance, you can summarize location, you can summarize product category, you can do for city, you can do for gender, you can do that for channel, right? Channel of sales. You can also do for return flag, right? You can do that. So basically expand, practice what we have showed you, then expand. I want to see your expansion, okay? So we want to look at some ifs, right? Some if. We want to look at some if. So we want to sum, let's put it here, sales. We want to sum sales. Now we have seen the total sales here, right? Now let us look at the contribution of each of our locations to that total sales. Basically, that's what we'll be looking at. The contribution to each of these, each of the locations to these total sales. Okay, so let's do this. So we'll say equals sum, but this time we are adding if, right? So basically we are adding the cells specified by giving conditional criteria. Okay, so I'm going to open parentheses. Now you see, in the count, we only had 2 items, the range and the criteria in the count if, right? In the count we only had the range and the criteria. But in the sum if, we have the range, we have the criteria, and we have the sum range. So you see, that's the difference. So the range is where the criteria comes from. Remember that the range is what? Is where the criteria comes from. So what we are going to do now is to indicate our range. So our range is coming from, this criteria will be coming from our location, right? A region, right? Okay, region instead. So let us pick our region. Okay. So we will say comma, that is our range, right? We'll say comma, that is a range. So the criteria here will be our first criteria from the other sheet, which is Abuja. So I'm just going to put this here in quote, and I'll say comma. Now the sum range, because we are summing based on the criteria. So we have to indicate the sum range. The sum range, or our sum range, will be total sales. Okay, that's what our sum range is going to be, total sales. So let me impute this total sales, okay? And that will be fine. With this, we have satisfied the syntax for sum if, and I'm going to close my parentheses and hit enter. So with this now, I would have successfully calculated my sales for Abuja. So like I said, the reason I'm showing you this, I don't want you to be going back and forth the sheets when you're in the formula bar. It messes up your formula. So that is why I will just hard encode it and tell you that, oh, yes, you can remove this Abuja, for instance, and take Abuja from this, your list. It should give you the same value. And with this, you can just autofill to give you the contribution of each of the locations to our total sales. So let's just format this as currency, it takes the dollar currency, right? So you can see, if we sum this now, it's still going to give us this sum. Do you want to try that? So let's see, equals sum, open parentheses, and we sum this and hit enter. You see, it gives us exactly the same value. Okay, so let me take that out. So what do you think SUMIFS will be? What do you think the difference between SUMIF and SUMIFS will be? Shall we look at that? Remember when we talked about COUNTIFS, we could count using two different criteria, right? That's exactly what happens with SUMIFS, okay? And we also have average if. Average if and SUMIF just basically have similar syntax. The difference is that where you sum, the sum range will now be the average range. So that is just different. So you can try that out, okay? So let's see SUMIFS. Okay, so SUMIFS now, I'm going to, let's look at sales from particular, let's say sales, the example we used earlier, sales of electronics from different locations. Let's just use that, okay? So we'll say equals SUMIFS, okay? Now, this is the plural of the form of it, right? Because it now refers to several conditions, okay? We open parentheses. Now you see we have our sum range. So we are going to insert the sum range. Our sum range will be sales in this case, right? Total sales in this case. So let's go to that sheet where we have total sales here. Okay, and I'm going to pick total sales and down so that it gives us total sales, right? And I'll say comma. So the criteria range 1, remember what I described criteria range 1 as, right? Or criteria range. Criteria range is where we pull our criteria. Basically trying to tell Excel, hey, I'm pulling something out of a particular range. So if it's not there, it's not there. But if it's there, make sure it's there. So that is basically what it is. So our criteria range is, our criteria range 1 basically will be location, right? Or region, will be region. So let us take region, okay? Then we'll say comma. Then our criteria 1, right? We started there as Abuja, right? So we'll say open quotes, we'll say Abuja, close quote, because we want to know the total sales in Abuja based on a condition. That is the total electronic sales in Abuja. So I'll say comma. Now it takes me to the criteria range 2. The criteria range 2, in this case, or in this example I'm giving you, will be our product category because that is where electronic stays, right? So we'll say this. So I will now say comma to indicate my criteria 2 or my second criteria. I'll open quote and I'll say electronics. Okay, electronics. And I will close my parentheses. Mind you, remember, you can have as many as possible criteria, but in our scenario here, we are using 2 criteria. Okay, so I'll hit enter. When I hit enter, I'm having the total sales of electronics from Abuja. That's what it just means. Now that I'm here, like I said, I don't want to make you confuse the formulas. That is why I'll do this. Now that I'm here, I could use this location for Abuja because this is Abuja, right? Abuja is in this cell, okay? So I can come to the formula here. I will have to click on the calculations I've done to be able to access the formula, mind you. So I come to the formula and remove Abuja here and replace it with where Abuja is domiciled in our new sheet. That will still give us the same value. And that will also allow us to be able to do what? To autofill. Because when you come to the last formula here, you see this is A50, right? And A50 is reverse, right? So it calculates how many times reverse occurs in our main data set. It also calculates the sales coming from electronics from reverse states. Basically, that is what happens here. Okay, so we can format these as currency in dollars. Okay, And if you want, you could also calculate the total from these sales. And as well, do SUMIFS for electronics or SUMIF for electronics so that you see how these total matches. So you can do that on your own, right? So I hope you are progressing very well. So now we are done with aggregates, right? So let us do measures of central tendency. We will be using just the sales. Remember, the measures of central tendency here is just for us to basically show you how to use average, how median, and mode. So basically, let's use the quantity, I'll say the quantity column, right, to determine this. And we'll be giving you assignments, okay? Yes, assignments for the week. So it's good that we cover that because I'll be reading out the assignments. And so take notes, okay? So let's do measures of central tendency first, okay? So I'm going to say measures of central tendencies, okay? So the first we'll be looking at is the average, okay? So say equals average. So average will return the average, that is the arithmetic mean of its arguments, okay? So I will open parentheses and I want to go to our data set by clicking on the sheet where our data set is. So you remember I said I want to use just a quantity. Let us know the average quantity, right? So I'm going to select quantity, hold down Shift and Control, my down arrow key, right, to pick that. So basically, I look at that, it ended somewhere before. So quantity is in the L column, right? So I can just correct this easily because I want it to be in L 15,001. And I'll close my parentheses and hit enter. So it gives us the average. This is the average quantity, right? So what about median? Say median is the middle value, right? So we could determine the middle value. So we'll say we want to determine the median. So we'll say equals median. So median returns the median. That is the number in the middle of set of given numbers. So open parentheses and do the same thing for the quantity, right? So let us adjust this to make sure it covers the entire range. I'll be L 15,001, right? We close the parentheses and hit enter. So the median value here is 3. That is, middle value is 3. Remember, I will say these are measures of central tendencies, right? So let us look at the mode. So we'll be first looking at a single mode, okay? So we will say, let's say mode, and I want to look at the single, okay? So say equals mode. So we have the multiple mode or the single mode. So let's pick the single mode. So this single mode does what? Return the most frequently occurring or repetitive value in an array or range of data. So open parentheses, and we will look at that same quantity column. Okay. So again, we can adjust. The reason that for that break that we can't go from 1 to 15,000 is because we hit an empty or null value somewhere there. So let's say L 1500, 15,001, close our parentheses and hit enter. So our mode is 2. That is, we have 2 as the most repetitions, right? So what will we get if we do mode for multiple? Okay, let's see. Okay, so say equals mode, and we are going to pick the multiple. and the multiple returns a vertical array of the most frequently occurring or repeated values in an array or range of data. So for a horizontal array, it's telling you to use transpose mode this way, okay? That is for the horizontal array. So the vertical array will be the array of the columns. The horizontal array means array of rows, okay? Because the reason you're using a transpose function there is that it will first transpose within the function, then before it will transpose from horizontal to vertical before it now search for most occurring values. So that is it, okay? So you see, that will not have been or will be possible within the mode, the single mode, right? So let us see what we get here. So let's change this to 15,001, close parentheses and hit enter. You see, we are getting the same mode. But what if we wanted to look at the mode from, say, assuming we had horizontal values? That is where the multiple will have been very, very instrumental, but we have the same results because 2 is the most occurring, the most frequent value or the most occurring value within that array, okay? So yes, that is clear, I suppose. So let us look at some simple examples from measures of spread. We are just going to be looking at mean and max, okay? So mean here requires or means we are looking for at the smallest number, right? We're looking at the smallest number. So let's look at the smallest value from our sales, okay? Our total sales, we could do that, right? We say equals mean. So mean here returns the smallest number in a set of values, right? So we'll say open parentheses. Let's go to our total sales, right? I held down Control and Shift and down arrow key to select everything from up to downward, okay? I close parentheses and hit enter. So smallest total sales is 3.52, right? What about maximum? So maximum is equals max. So max returns the largest values in a set of values, okay? So let's do the max of the same. Assuming at the last row, which is 15,001, I'll hold down my Shift and Control and use the up arrow key. You see, it takes me to the top, right? So I'm going to close my parentheses and it tells me the largest value within that, okay? And 3,461.6 is a largest value. So here we could easily answer the question, what is the smallest value within that array, with that set of values? What is the maximum number within those set of values? So we could answer that clearly. So let's look at using pivot tables for summary statistics. All of this we have done, specifically the SUMIF, COUNTIF, SUMIFS, COUNTIFs, will have been easily done on using pivot tables, okay? So let's create a new sheet. I click this plus to create a new sheet. So we will now use pivot tables to determine this stuff we already determined, okay? Now, let's do this now, okay? So I will go to, or stay here in my new sheet and go to Insert tab. I'll click the drop down on Insert on Pivot Tables here. You see from Data Model, right? So because I can use Data Model because I have attached my data to the data model. I linked my data to data model. However, for now, I'm going to use from table or range so that it's easy for us to follow through. When we go into data modeling, we will use these, okay? But it's gradually, and I believe you catch up. So let's pick from table or range. When we pick from table or range, we have these. So what we are going to impute here is the name of this table, right? If you don't know the name of our cleaned data set, you just click there, here in this space, and click on the sheet here, click anywhere within the table and say Control A. If you are using MacBook, you say Command A, okay? So now I say Control A, and basically I've gotten that clean sales, right? So if you're setting that you remember the name or know the name, you can just impute the name and it will be fine. So you see here is fine. We say existing worksheet because we came from sheet 3, so it's fine, okay? We'll click OK. When we click OK, you can see here that we've entered our pivot canvas already. So basically where we draw our pivot tables. So in this area here, we have the pivot table fields, right? All the columns within that our table, clean sales, will be represented here. So here we have 4 areas. We have the filter area, we have the columns area, we have the row area, and the values area. So I'm going to explain this as we use them. So remember what we did. We used regions earlier, right? So let me go to region. I'm going to take region to rows. That means rows will serve as our labels, right? It will serve as our labels. So we counted the number of regions initially using formula, that is count if. We did count if, right? And we use region. So to achieve that, I'm going to take region again, that I'll click hold and drag to values. So that will give me the count of regions. That is to say, whatever I put in values, if it's text, it's going to count it, right? If it's a value, that is numbers, it's going to sum it by default. So count for text by default, sum for numbers by default. But if I want to perform a different analysis or analysis that is not just on count, I'm going to click the drop down on these and then click value field settings. I click on value field settings. I'll come to here, show value as. Right now, it is on no calculation because automatically it counts, right? So I can click the drop down. I can say percentage of grand total, percentage of column total, percentage of, I indicate that. So let me say percentage of grand total, and I click OK. So it will tell me the percentage. Maybe my goal is to determine the percentage of occurrence of each of these cities, right? That gives you clarity there, right? So let's go back to value field setting and just put show value as no calculation so that it just remains on count. You can see that, right? So the second thing we did was what? We did count if for this, then we did count is for multiple conditions. Let us achieve that with pivot table, right? So we still go to insert. I click somewhere within the sheet again. I'll go to insert. I will now go to pivot table again. I'll say from table or range. This time, now I am setting off my table name. I'll say cleaned sales, right? That will represent this table name, right? Okay. So I click OK. Once I click OK, I've inserted that pivot canvas. So I'll take region again to rows. Remember, I'll click hold and drag. Then I am going to take, we know we use electronics, then I'm going to now take electronics from product category. So this time, instead of just using electronics, we can look at the product category from all of it. So I'm going to put it at column. So columns and rows serve as what? Serve as labels. Only that the rows now serve as the row serves as horizontal labels, while the column serves as vertical labels. Now, there are a few problems here. We could see there are a few problems here. You could see automotive. That is why data cleaning is very important. You can see automotive here, and you see automotive here. That is to say, this automotive is poorly spelled, so it looks at it as a separate entity. The same thing for electronics, same thing for household, the same for sports, I think we missed that when we're cleaning the data. We could still leave it at this and go back and clean, right? So we'll come to clean and go to product category. Product category, let's look at a drop down, and it's clear we still have those electronics with 0, automotive with 0. So let's take note of that. Automotive, there is O there, auto is 0. O after M is 0. So we will change that. So we also have electronics, where O is meant to be, it's 0. So we will change that. So we'll change that, right? Then we, what else? Sports or household as well. So household, we have H0. Okay. Then another H0. So we'll change that. Then sports as well to make sure we can harmonize. So the O there is 0. So let's clean that. Okay. So what we will do here, we can also do that here from our product category. Instead of going back, we could go back to Power Query to do that, but I've already shown you how to do that in Power Query, right? So I could as well just show you how to do that here in Excel. So what we will do is that we will use the replace, right, here as well. But remember, whatever you do here, right, will not reflect in Power Query, because this is just an output of the Power Query, right? So I will just show you how to do automotive here. Then we go to Power Query to do the rest, just so that I show you in case you are just doing here, you are just correcting here. Okay. So we'll just say Control H as shortcut. Control H is find and replace. Or you can just come down to find here. You can see find or replace here. If you click on replace, you have what you have earlier as find and replace. So we want to find what? We want to find the wrong thing, right? The automotive was the 0 here, the O here was 0. Then M 0. This is what we want to find, the wrong item. So sorry, 0, the wrong item here. That's what we want to find. Then what we want to replace with is the correct spelling, automotive. Okay. Now be careful with this part here, because if care is not taken, you are going to mess up your replace, because wherever A is, it will mess it up, right? So what we want to do is that we want to find within this sheet, we want to search by column, okay? So we don't want to match case, because match case means anything that starts from A, that's what it means. So we want to match the entire cell content. So it must be the entire cell content. So now, if you don't see this part when you do yours, all you need to do is to click on options. Some of you will just see only like this. So click on options to have these options that we just did here. So the next thing I will do is to what? Click on replace all. When I click on replace all, I'm going to see that we all done. We made 12 replacements. That is, the 12 of those items have been changed. So we'll close that. Let us click on a drop down and see. We do not have any of such automotive again. That is how to deal with it here, right? You can do that for the rest of them. But it's important that we remember that we worked on these from Power Query. So it's only fitting that we go to Power Query and correct it, so that these and all our model, wherever we have connected these to, will be the same and not just here. So how do we do that? How do we go back to Power Query? I'm going to click on Query here, right? And I can just click on Edit. Okay, when I click on Edit, it takes me back to that query. Okay, so I will go back to the product category, right? Let me click the drop down the product category. So here it doesn't show because the list is not complete. Let me click on reload. So you are going to see, Shay, you remember that we dealt with this automotive, but you see it's still here, right? It's still here because we did that locally, I'll say, without actually taking care of it from the connection. So that's why it's still here. So that's why it's important that I showed you this, okay? So let us go to this product category and deal with this. So I want to replace values, right? Just as we did in the first class, which is the part one. Click on find and replace. Then I want to find what? All to 0, M0, then TIV, okay? And I want to replace it with the correct value, automotive, okay? All right, I'll click OK. It will correctly replace that. If I click the drop down, I don't have that again. And remember we did this. The issue was that we didn't take note of this. A list may be incomplete. So you load more so that you have all of it. So automotive is actually correct now. So let's deal with the next, which is electronics, right? So we highlight product category again, replace values. And let's say electronics was, throw this 0, this O is 0, electronics, right? And let's replace with the right electronics, okay? Then we click OK. That has been replaced. We can see, let's load more to ensure that we actually loaded it correctly. So electronics is gone. So we have household and sport left. So let's replace value. Find what? Let's say, let's deal with sports. So this was the wrong sport. We correct with the right sports. And OK. So we will go now to household so that we round up. So household was H0. Would that be the case? Let's confirm. Let's cancel and confirm what household was. So, okay, this is the wrong spelling of household. This is the right spelling of household. So replace value, we'll say this is 0. This is 0. Okay, so the correct household will be this. Okay, so say okay. So when we look at this, I think this will be good now. Everything is correct. Automotive, beauty, clothing, electronics, grocery, household, sports, and toys. No other mess. We click OK. Now, we already loaded this before. We have this loaded before, right? So if you go to home, you see close and load to is grade, right? Because we have it loaded before. We could just want to refresh. So if you say you want to close this, it will ask you, do you want to keep your changes or you want to discard? So you say you want to keep it. You keep it and it closes. So what we'll do now, you see, is going to refresh. You see, it's a retrieving, is retrieving. And if you feel it has not retrieved, you just here on query, you just click on refresh. Okay, it will refresh. So now, because we did that from the connection, it's refreshed. We can click the drop down here and see that everything is adequate now. Everything is dealt with. Okay, so when we go back to pivot table, you see we still have the wrong stuff here, right? So what we can do, click on the pivot table, the very pivot table you want to refresh to reflect your new data, your new data reality. So you now click on pivot analyze, then you come to refresh and say refresh all. Once you click on refresh all, what happens is that it's refreshing. Now it will refresh now to show you the current reality of your clean data. And that is it, right? You can see it has showed us that. Okay. Now the difference is this. I don't know. When we did electronics, remember electronics was not spelled properly. So here, will it change the electronics here? When we did, let me see, count eves here. When we did for electronics, will it count it? Do you think it will count this? So that is the difference. That remains, but these have the ability to be refreshed when things are changed to reflect the reality on ground. So now we have put the labels, but we have not performed the calculations yet. To perform the calculation, since it's total sales, we want to determine total sales across these labels. I'm going to click on total sales, drag and put in values. That will give me the sales of automotive in Abuja, the sales of the beauty from beauty category in Abuja, clothing, electronics, and all the likes. Okay. From here, I could still see the total sales, okay, or from each of what? Of automotive, total automotive sales, total beauty sales, total clothing sales, right? From here, from the horizontal side, I could see the totals from Abuja, that is from the locations, right? While you see from here, you can see the what? The totals from the product categories, okay? So you can just highlight all of these and use the currency that you've been using earlier for better clarity. So remember, we have not talked about a filter area here. The filter area now allows us to insert filters. These filters will be important. Later, we'll look at them when we're looking at visualizations. We'll call them sliders. Okay. So now let's look at a filter. The filter is something that you use to filter through. You may filter with age, you may filter with gender, you may also filter with dates. Okay, those are the most common, right, that you use. So we have dates, right? We have order dates, right? So I can pick order date to filter. When I pick the order date to filter, what can happen? Let me remove this filter and adjust this, okay? Let me adjust this so that we don't confuse this. So I'm going to insert more empty rows, okay? So that I insert a filter here. Let me use order date. I pick order date here. So you see, this represents everything within the order date. It represents what? Everything within the order date. Okay, so let's say probably we want to see sales in 2023. Okay, so what I'll do is to click a drop down on this all. I'll click on select multiple items. That means here I can select multiple items, right? And then pick a particular date that I want. It's going to give me that filter. Okay, what if I want to, let me remove this. I want gender, okay? If I want gender, I'm going to pick gender to filter. I do the same thing, click the drop down, select all, then deselect all and say, okay, I want to know how many females purchased, and I'm going to see the filter based on the number of females that purchased the items. Okay, so I believe it's clear. So now I want to, let us do something concerning, so we have done region. Let us do something concerning age. I want to show you age. Let's look at the sales based on age. Okay, let me insert a new pivot table. I click on insert pivot table from table range. Table, remember, is called cleaned sales. Okay, so I'll go ahead and click OK. When I click OK, what will happen now is that I want to pick age to rows. And that is important because I want to show you something. If I pick age, you see what happens? I just have a long list of age. Why? Because we don't have much repetitions. Although there are repetitions here, basically, and that will help us aggregate, right? We don't want a list like this. So I'll use a range instead. So I'm going to right click somewhere. I'll say group, right? Now, what did I do? I clicked somewhere within that range, right click rather, right? I right click within the list and I picked group. When I pick group, it now tells me that the list age in my list is 16 and the highest is 82. So it asks me by how many years do I want to group? Do you want to group by 10 years or by 5 years or by 2 years or whatever number of years you want to group? So let's just say, let's group by 10 years, okay? So by 10 years, I'll say, okay, see what happens now. I have grouped by 10 years based on my list. So this shortens it, and this can easily help us identify or determine the age brackets that purchased products more, right? Let me take total sales to value. You can see that the age bracket that purchased our products more. It can help the company with marketing, promotional development of promotional materials to better target the age groups with the highest sale. So let me format this to currency, and we'll just use a quick chart to show us clearly, okay? So let me just insert a quick chart just to show you that. I click within that pivot table, and I'll go to insert. You can see we have a pivot chart. I'll click on the pivot chart, and let me just pick this pivot chart, right? I click OK. Now, we can see this pivot chart. It will be easy for us to see our cluster where our customers are clustered. Okay, so it's just around this age group, around 16 to 45. This is the cluster. As they go older, we have some reductions. Okay, so let me just delete this total here. We already know it's total. Okay, then I'll click on the series, right click, and say format data series. I want to reduce the gap between these series, that is these poles, right? Those are what we call series. Let me reduce the gap. I'll just click here, drag it closer, and it will reduce. So you see, it looks better, right? Okay, it looks better now. So clearly, we can basically see our cluster, right? Our customer cluster. With this, our clients will be able to focus advert materials or develop advert materials that will suit this age demographic. Okay, so you can do that as well. Okay, so based on the assignment, you are going to be building a summary block to look at the total sales, average order value, total number of orders, number of returns, average rating, median shipping days. You're also going to create a pivot table with rows and region. That is, rows will be region, columns will be product category, and values will be total sales. Okay, then you are going to determine the this. You are going to determine the payment method that generates more sales, right? You're also going to determine the channel that had the highest sale. Okay, you are going to also determine the sales between coupon applied, whether true or false. Let us see which one had the highest sales. Is it the sales with coupon applied? Is it the sales with coupon not applied? So thank you very much. Remember to drop your question in the comment section. We will deal with it, okay? Do have a blessed evening. Bye.